The fog hung heavy over Arlington, curling around the rows of white headstones like a ghostly shroud. Private Ethan Caldwell's boots clicked sharply against the stone with each precise step. 21 in total, a rhythm drilled into him during months of training. His breath rose in pale clouds, mingling with the cold autumn air. At 2 a.m., the cemetery was silent, a stillness so absolute it pressed against his ears, until it wasn't. From the corner of his eye, Ethan caught movement beyond the chain-link barrier. A figure flickered in the fog, a soldier in an old, olive-drab uniform, frozen mid-step, eyes hollow yet intensely staring at him. Ethan's heart thumped violently, threatening to betray his composure. Tomb guards never flinch. They do not break protocol. He gripped his M14 rifle tighter, its weight a familiar anchor in the swirling mist. When he looked again, the figure had vanished, leaving only fog and the eerie whisper of the night. The fog seemed alive, twisting and curling, each swirl hiding secrets of the past. Ethan's first solo shift felt longer than months combined. He walked his 21 steps, paused, turned, repeated, precision in motion. But a cold shiver traced his spine. Shadows seemed deeper, darker, yet he forced himself to maintain a mask of discipline under the dim glow of the monument's lights. By the next night, the apparition returned. Closer this time, near the edge of the plaza. Ethan saw more detail. Faded chevrons marking a private, a young face perhaps 19, pale as the marble beneath his feet. The soldier's eyes locked with Ethan's, not threatening, but pleading, as if he needed something only Ethan could provide. The figure raised a hand, pointing toward a distant row of headstones, then dissolved into the fog as silently as it had appeared. Rattled, Ethan confided in Sergeant Maria Torres, leaning against the doorframe of the guard shack. Maria's gaze was piercing, her voice sharp. "You look like you saw a ghost, Caldwell." He forced a laugh, hiding the tremor in his hands. "Maybe I did." "You ever see anything weird out there at night?" She smirked faintly. "Arlington has its stories. Shadows, whispers, men who don't belong. Comes with the territory. Don't let it break you." Her words lingered as Ethan stepped back into the cold night, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon him. The following evening, Ethan confronted the figure with a mixture of fear and resolve. "You want me to know something, don't you?" he whispered, voice barely audible. The soldier remained still, eyes pleading, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan glimpsed flashes of a muddy trench, the crack of artillery, and a young man clutching a letter stained with blood, moments lost in time yet painfully real. When the vision faded, the soldier pointed once more toward the headstones and vanished. Ethan's pulse raced as he returned to the barracks, mind racing with questions. Who was this soldier? What story did he carry? That night marked the beginning of Ethan's journey into the unknown, a path where the dead whispered and the living listened, and where honor meant more than guarding stone. It meant remembering the souls who had been forgotten. The morning. Light filtered weakly through the heavy fog, spilling over the white marble rows of Arlington National Cemetery. Ethan sat in the barracks, scrolling through his phone, eyes fixed on images of soldiers from every war. Each photograph seemed a whisper, the frozen faces echoing stories long buried. One photo caught his breath. A young World War I doughboy, in olive drab, eyes wide, holding a letter. The uniform strangely familiar. His stomach twisted. Could this be the soldier he had seen? Ethan reached for the phone again and called his grandfather, George Caldwell, a retired World War II veteran, who lived in a quiet town an hour away. George's voice crackled over the line, warm yet seasoned with years of hardship. "What's eating you, son?" he asked. Ethan hesitated, then poured out the tale of the figure in the fog, the pleading eyes, the pointing hand. "Grandpa, am I losing it? Or is this real?" he whispered. George was silent for a moment, remembering. "Back in '44 in France, I saw shadows in the trenches, men who weren't there. My buddy swore he saw his brother killed a year before, standing at the edge of camp. War leaves echoes. Ethan, those boys at Arlington, the unknowns, they don't rest easy if no one remembers them. Maybe this soldier wants you to listen. Give him a name." That night, Ethan stepped onto the plaza with renewed purpose. The fog had thinned slightly, stars piercing the sky above. He walked the 21 steps, pause, turn, 21 steps, again. When the soldier appeared, Ethan did not flinch. "I'm here," he whispered softly. "Show me." The figure's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, the world shifted. Flashes of mud-soaked trenches, the roar of artillery, a young man clutching a letter, and blood-stained fabric filled Ethan's mind. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it was gone. The apparition pointed again toward a distant row of headstones before vanishing. Ethan returned to his research with fervor, scouring Arlington archives, old military records, and any scrap of information he could find. Among the records, a faint lead surfaced. A mention of a World War I private buried as an unknown, a scrap of paper found in his pocket bearing only Will, Pennsylvania, 19. No last name, no unit, just a boy who had died. In one of the war's bloodiest battles, the Meuse-Argonne offensive, Ethan whispered into the empty barracks. "Was that you?" Determined to connect with the unknown soldier, Ethan began speaking aloud during his shifts. "Hey, Will, if that's your name, I'm Ethan. I'm from Ohio. My dad was in Iraq. Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for this." The fog curled around him, the weight of unseen eyes pressing close. And yet the act of speaking felt like a bridge forming between past and present. One night, the visions intensified. Will's lips did not move, yet images flooded Ethan's mind. A Pennsylvania farm, a mother sewing a uniform, a young man writing a letter by candlelight promising to return home by Christmas. Then, the chaos of battle, mud, blood, the deafening crack of shells. The letter clutched in his hand, never delivered. Ethan staggered, gripping his rifle for support. "I saw it," he whispered. "I saw you. What do you need me to do?" Will's eyes softened, almost peaceful now, and he pointed once more toward the headstones. Ethan knew his path. The unknown soldier's story would no longer be silent. Ethan spent the following days submerged in archives, his fingers tracing the edges of yellowed documents, dog-eared folders, and fragile photographs. The Tomb Guard shack had become a small command center, with scattered military records, maps, and notes littering the table. The fog outside seemed to press against the windows, mirroring the weight of the unknown pressing on his mind. Every step he had taken across the plaza echoed in his thoughts, as if the soldier he had seen was guiding him through each motion, each pause, each 21-step sequence. One afternoon, he found a promising lead, a faint record of a private, William Harper from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, listed as missing in 1918. No body recovered, no family notified. Ethan's pulse quickened. This had to be him. He traced Harper's history through scattered letters and unit reports, piecing together fragments of a life lost too soon. A photograph showed a young man, barely older than 19, with soft features under a standard-issue cap, the same haunted eyes Ethan had glimpsed in the fog. That night, Ethan returned to the tomb with a quiet reverence. The fog had thinned but still clung to the edges of the plaza. He walked his 21 steps, pausing at the end, breathing in the cold air. Will appeared almost immediately, closer than ever. Ethan spoke softly. "I know your name now. William Harper, from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You're not just a shadow here anymore." The soldier's eyes held recognition, a glimmer of relief, and for the first time, Ethan felt that the unseen burden of the tomb had lightened just a fraction. Determined to honor Harper properly, Ethan contacted Dr. Sarah Lynn, a historian who had worked extensively with Arlington records. Her office smelled of old books and polished wood, a faint mustiness under the soft glow of desk lamps. Skeptical at first, Sarah listened as Ethan detailed everything: the visions, the scrap of paper, and the pointing figure in the fog. She finally agreed to help, digging through records, cross-referencing battalion logs and missing person reports. Within days, she found corroboration. Harper had indeed been reported missing during the Meuse-Argonne offensive, confirming the connection Ethan felt so deeply. Ethan spent hours transcribing what he had seen: the farm in Pennsylvania, the mother sewing uniforms, the letters never sent. He shared the details with Sergeant Maria Torres, expecting incredulity, but she simply nodded. "You're doing right by him," she said. "That's what the tomb is about. Not just guarding, but remembering." Her words strengthened Ethan's resolve. He approached his commanding officer with a proposal: a memory project, an initiative to record, honor, and share the stories of unknown soldiers throughout Arlington. Though hesitant at first, the officer was swayed by Maria's support and Ethan's unwavering commitment. The first small ceremony was scheduled at dusk on a chilly November evening. Soldiers, veterans, and families gathered quietly, the autumn wind carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Ethan held a carefully written note in his hands, voice steady, yet raw as he began. Private William Harper, born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 1899. He dreamed of becoming a teacher and wrote letters home promising to return by Christmas. He died in the Meuse-Argonne offensive in October 1918. Tonight we remember him. Silence fell, punctuated only by the soft rustle of clothing and the occasional sniffle. Ethan felt the weight lift, a tangible lightness in the air, as if Will, himself, were finally at peace. After the first ceremony, Arlington felt different to Ethan. The fog still rolled over the headstones, curling like fingers of memory. But it no longer pressed with fear. It felt alive with stories waiting to be told. The Memory Project, as he had dubbed it, quickly became a quiet mission. Ethan spent his days coordinating with other tomb guards, recording fragments of lives from old letters, dog tags, and military records. Every name unearthed was a voice reclaimed from the silence of history. Evenings were spent walking the plaza, the cold air sharp against his face. Will appeared often now, always pointing toward forgotten graves, guiding Ethan to soldiers whose stories had been lost. Sometimes the visions were brief: a girl sewing a uniform by candlelight, a young man clutching a photograph, the clash of artillery over muddy trenches. Each vision left Ethan breathless, yet more determined. Speaking aloud to these spirits became second nature. "I'm listening, Will. I'll tell them," he whispered during one patrol, his voice swallowed by the mist but firm in purpose. Other guards began noticing subtle changes. Sergeant Maria Torres watched Ethan with a mix of pride and cautious amusement. "You're talking to shadows now, Caldwell," she said one evening. Ethan smiled faintly, eyes scanning the fog. "No, ma'am. I'm talking to brothers who've been forgotten." Her expression softened, and she quietly assisted him, verifying records and encouraging participation. Slowly, the project began, spreading among the regiment, a shared responsibility to honor the unknown. Ethan also reached out to schools and community groups. Students read aloud names at classroom assemblies, left flowers at the tomb, and wrote letters imagining the lives of these long-lost soldiers. The impact was subtle but powerful, a bridge forming between past and present, children feeling a tangible connection to history. Ethan marveled at how stories, once whispered only in foggy nights at Arlington, now resonated far beyond the cemetery gates. Months passed. Each ceremony grew slightly larger, families and veterans quietly joining to witness the reading of names. The plaza at dusk shimmered with candles, the autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves and quiet reverence. Ethan took meticulous notes on every detail, ensuring the stories were preserved for future generations. With Dr. Sarah Lynn's help, the records were digitized, accessible to families and the public. The Memory Project became more than a personal mission. It became a living archive, breathing life into history. One crisp evening, as the fog thickened again, Ethan stood at his post, the boots of new guards clicking in rhythm behind him. Will appeared, eyes calm, almost approving, pointing to a headstone with a small bouquet placed at its base. Ethan bent, reading the attached note. "Thank you for remembering them." A young girl, no more than 10, stepped forward holding her father's hand. Ethan approached gently. "Why the flower?" he asked. Her eyes sparkled. "My grandpa was in Vietnam. Nobody knew his name until you started telling their stories. I wanted to say thank you." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He saluted her father, a veteran in a wheelchair, who returned it with a nod of quiet pride. As they walked away, Ethan glanced back at the tomb, marble glowing softly in the lantern light. Will's presence seemed warmer, peaceful. The fog rolled in, but Ethan no longer feared it. For the first time, Arlington felt less like a place of shadows and more like a place of connection. The past was no longer silent, and Ethan knew that through the memory project, he had given the unknown a voice, one step, one name, and one story at a time. A year had passed since Ethan first glimpsed Will in the fog. Arlington had changed, but so had he. No longer a new recruit, he had risen to sergeant, his badge gleaming on his chest, every movement at the tomb precise yet imbued with the quiet weight of responsibility. The memory project had grown beyond his expectations, connecting families, schools, and veterans in a shared act of remembrance. Ethan's evenings were spent at the tomb, walking the familiar 21 steps. Pause, turn, 21 steps again. The fog rolled in thick and soft, carrying the whisper of the past through the rows of headstones. Will appeared often, no longer a ghost of unrest, but a silent companion, guiding Ethan towards soldiers whose stories had yet to be told. The visions continued, sometimes vivid and harrowing, sometimes quiet and fleeting. The young men and women of wars past reaching out across time for acknowledgement. One evening, a group of new recruits joined him for training. They were nervous, hesitant, unsure what it meant to stand guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Ethan didn't give a long speech, only a few words, measured and steady. "The tomb isn't just stone," he said. "It's a promise to the unknowns, to their families, to each other. You'll feel them out there, in the fog, in the quiet. They're not ghosts, they're brothers. Listen to them, remember them. That's what makes us guards." The recruits nodded, some wide-eyed, some quietly understanding. Ethan walked away, boots echoing, when a young private called out, "Sergeant Caldwell, do you ever see anything out there? Like the stories?" Ethan allowed himself a faint smile. "Keep your eyes open, Private. You might." And in that simple answer, the past met the present, and the cycle of remembrance continued. Later that night, Ethan stood alone at his post, fog thick, silent except for the rhythm of his own boots. He completed his 21 steps, pausing at the end, gaze sweeping over the endless white markers. No soldier appeared, no visions came, yet he felt a presence, gentle and steady, as if a hand rested lightly on his shoulder. He whispered softly, "Thank you, Will. Rest easy, brother." And in the echoing quiet of Arlington, he knew the boy was finally at peace. Ethan returned home the next morning to visit his grandfather, George. The retired veteran sat in his armchair, a photograph of his old unit on the mantel. Ethan shared the story of the young girl, the flower, and the continued work of the memory project. George's eyes glistened with pride. "You did good, son," he said. "Those boys, they're resting easier now." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of years of service and remembrance lifting slightly. A few hours later, he visited his father, Tom, tinkering with an old radio in the garage. Hesitation lingered before Ethan stepped inside. "Dad, can we talk about Iraq? About you?" Silence hung. Then Tom set down his wrench. For hours they shared stories, spilling memories of patrols, friends lost, and the quiet burdens they carried home. For the first time, father and son spoke not just as family, but as soldiers, bound by shared understanding. Months later, Ethan stood before another group of recruits, their eyes eager yet nervous. The fog curled around the plaza, the tomb standing, resolute in the background. He felt the steady presence of history all around him, the lessons of bravery, sacrifice, and remembrance flowing through him. The memory project had become a living legacy, and every story he shared, every name spoken aloud, connected the living to those who had been forgotten. Arlington was no longer just a cemetery. It was a bridge between past and present, anchored by duty, honor, and memory. Autumn had settled deep into Arlington, painting the cemetery with muted oranges and browns, while the early fog rolled in thick across the rows of white headstones. Sergeant Ethan Caldwell's steps were measured and rhythmic, the familiar 21, pause, turn, 21 again. Yet tonight felt different. The fog seemed alive, curling and twisting like whispers of the past, carrying with it echoes of long-forgotten soldiers. Every headstone appeared to lean slightly closer, as if the stories of those who rested beneath them were waiting to be told once more. The memory project had grown. Ethan walked alongside fellow guards, sharing the duty and the reverence, teaching the recruits not just the steps of guarding, but the weight of responsibility, the moral compass of remembrance. They read names aloud at dusk, lights flickering across the plaza, voices blending with the soft rustle of autumn leaves. Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction as he watched the young soldiers grasp the significance of their post, not merely standing, guard over stone, but honoring life, history, and sacrifice. The fog thickened suddenly, coiling around the base of the monument. Ethan's pulse quickened, and instinctively, he paused. Will appeared again, pale in the mist, eyes steady and calm, pointing toward a section of headstones that had recently been uncovered in archival research. Ethan followed the gaze, heart pounding, noting the precise gravestones. Here lay a cluster of young soldiers, names long forgotten, identified only through fragments. A dog tag, a torn letter, a hastily written name in the register. Ethan felt the weight of their stories pressing on him, not with fear, but with urgency. Later at the tomb guard shack, Ethan reviewed records with Maria Torres. The two of them worked silently, broken only by the shuffle of papers and the scratch of pens. "They're counting on us," Maria said softly, glancing up from a ledger. Ethan nodded, tracing names and piecing together histories of bravery, loss, and dreams unfulfilled. Each fragment recovered felt like lifting a veil, bringing clarity and peace to souls who had waited a century for acknowledgement. That night, Ethan returned to the plaza alone. The fog was heavier than ever, swirling around his boots and the edges of headstones, muting the distant sounds of the city. He paused mid-step, closing his eyes, letting the weight of the past settle around him. He whispered, "We remember you. Every name, every story." And in the hush of the mist, he felt the subtle shift, the sense of calm, as though Arlington itself had exhaled, releasing centuries of silence into memory and voice. Ethan's thoughts wandered to the broader impact of the project, the schools, the families, the children who left flowers and letters. One small girl had written about her grandfather, once unknown, now honored. Veterans had shared tears and nods of recognition. Every gesture echoed the same truth. The past was alive in the present, not as a haunting, but as a bridge, a call to honor and remember. Ethan stood tall, boots planted firmly on the cold stone, feeling a quiet, profound connection across time and space. The fog began to thin, revealing the pale glow of moonlight across the headstones. Ethan exhaled, the tension easing from his shoulders. He looked toward the distant monument and murmured softly, "Thank you, Will. You've shown me the way." For the first time, the spectral presence did not linger in anguish or unrest. Instead, it seemed to acknowledge the work done, the lives remembered, the legacy carried forward. Arlington, ever silent yet ever vigilant, had become a living testament to memory, sacrifice, and the unbroken chain of those who serve. Chapter 7. Legacy in the Making. Winter's first frost had settled across Arlington National Cemetery, blanketing the headstones with a delicate layer of white. Sergeant Ethan Caldwell's boots crunched against the frozen gravel as he walked the familiar 21 steps. Pause, turn, 21 again. The chill bit at his cheeks, but it could not dampen the warmth swelling in his chest. The memory project had become more than a duty. It had become a movement. Each story remembered, each name spoken aloud, was a thread weaving the past into the present. Ethan paused at a headstone recently uncovered through diligent archival work. Will appeared beside him, no longer a figure of confusion or plea, but calm, almost approving. His eyes held a quiet acknowledgement of the efforts Ethan had undertaken to restore dignity to the forgotten soldiers. Ethan knelt briefly, brushing away frost, and whispered, "Your story is not lost. Not anymore." A subtle wind stirred, carrying a chorus of silence, as if the cemetery itself had responded. The following week saw a surge in participation. Families, veterans, and even local schools joined the monthly ceremonies, leaving flowers and notes at the tomb. Children read the names of unknown soldiers, their voices echoing in the crisp air, reverberating against marble and memory. Ethan walked among them, guiding, correcting, teaching, and listening. The fog that once brought fear now swirled like a veil of connection, a tangible reminder that past lives were never truly gone when remembered. One evening, a retired veteran approached Ethan, shaking hands with reverence. "You've done more than honor the unknowns," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You've given us all a way to remember our brothers, our families, ourselves." Ethan nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He realized that the project was no longer solely his mission. It belonged to the community, to every hand that placed a flower, every voice that spoke a name, every heart that remembered. Back at the Crow Tomb Guard Shack, Ethan and Maria Torres reviewed plans for the next memorial. The fire of responsibility burned bright in their eyes. "We need to ensure these stories are permanent," Maria said, tapping on the digital records, accessible to families, historians, anyone who seeks them. Ethan agreed, already envisioning a repository that would extend far beyond Arlington, a digital hall of remembrance for generations to come. That night, Ethan returned to the plaza alone. The fog rolled low, curling around the headstones like a living sea. Will appeared, pointing one last time toward a newly discovered grave, his expression serene. Ethan knelt, placing a hand on the cold stone, feeling the weight of history, the burden of forgotten lives, and the triumph of their recognition. "Rest now, brother," he whispered. "We will carry your story forward." The fog seemed to shimmer in response, a silent nod of gratitude from the past to the present. As Ethan completed his 21 steps, he noticed the faint glow of a single lantern at the edge of the plaza. A young girl approached, holding a small bouquet of white flowers. "I wanted to thank you," she said softly, her eyes bright. "My grandpa was unknown too, but now his story is remembered." Ethan smiled, saluting both the girl and the veteran accompanying her. The weight of countless stories lifted, replaced by a quiet, enduring peace. Winter settled deeper, but the warmth of remembrance burned bright. Arlington was no longer a place of solitary duty or chilling fog alone. It was a sanctuary of voices, memories, and the unbroken chain of honor. Ethan walked his final rounds of the night, boots echoing steadily, heart steady, knowing that the legacy he nurtured would continue. One name, one story, one step at a time. Chapter 8. Eternal vigil spring had begun to stir in Arlington, soft buds breaking through the winter frost, yet the fog still held its nightly sway over the cemetery. Sergeant Ethan Caldwell's boots struck the plaza in their familiar rhythm. 21 steps, pause, turn, 21 again. This night felt different. The fog was gentle, almost reverent, carrying the echoes of stories long told and those just rediscovered. The cemetery, once a place of solemn duty, had become a living chronicle. Each stone a testament to sacrifice, each shadow a whisper from the past. Ethan's heart was calm, steady, his eyes scanning the rows of headstones. Will appeared one last time in the mist, no longer seeking, pleading, or guiding, but standing quietly as if to witness the legacy now firmly rooted. Ethan paused before the tomb of the unknown soldier, taking a deep breath. "It's done, brother," he whispered. "Your story, and all the others, will never be lost again." The fog seemed to shimmer, a silent acknowledgement from the spirits who had finally found rest. Families, veterans, and recruits now filled the plaza regularly, reading names, sharing stories, leaving flowers and notes. Schools joined in, children learning to honor the past. One young girl approached Ethan that evening, a note clutched in her hand and a single white flower in the other. "Thank you for remembering them," she said softly. Ethan's throat tightened. He knelt, touched her shoulder lightly, and nodded, understanding the weight and the gift of remembrance. Later, Ethan returned to the tomb guard shack to prepare for his final night before a new rotation. Maria Torres joined him, her expression both proud and reflective. "You've changed this place, Ethan," she said, her voice quiet against the hum of fluorescent lights. "The unknowns finally have a voice, and the living know how to listen." Ethan nodded, feeling a quiet fulfillment unlike any he had known. Arlington was no longer a solitary vigil. It had become a shared promise between generations. The fog thickened as he stepped out into the plaza one last time. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of spring blooms. Ethan walked his 21 steps. Pause. Turn. 21. Again, boots echoing in rhythm with the pulse of history. At the end, he paused, looking out over the expanse of headstones. No soldier appeared. No visions. No whispers. Only a profound stillness that felt like peace. He whispered softly, "Thank you, Will. Rest easy, brother." And in the hush of the fog, it felt as though the entire cemetery had exhaled, releasing centuries of silence and sorrow into memory and acknowledgement. Ethan straightened, shoulders firm, heart steady. He had carried the legacy forward, bridged the past and present, and ensured that no story remained forgotten. As dawn approached, the first rays of sunlight touched the marble, casting long shadows across the plaza. Ethan's boots clicked one last time in the quiet before joining the new rotation of guards. The fog lifted slowly, revealing a landscape alive with remembrance, voices, and light. Arlington was eternal, the unknowns honored, and the living, forever bound to listen, remember, and share. Ethan walked away with a steady heart, knowing that the vigil would continue, a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the enduring human spirit.